what is the culture? What is the style? I have no idea. I've been watching Jerome Tang basketball for 3.5 years now. I have no idea what the fit is that you're trying to recruit to. I have zero clue. There's been no established identity. Hello and welcome into another edition of 3Ma. I am John Kurtz, joined by Derek Young and Cole Manbeck. It's not a happy one today. We're talking K-State's 24-point home loss to the Kansas Jayhawks. The worst loss in Manhattan to Kansas since 2002. It's Jim Wooldridge's second season, for those of you keeping track at home. And it ended with Melvin Council hitting the Wabash on K-State and company. Frankly, touche. Pretty funny. Also, belt being slapped on the floor of the K-State locker room, which I just saw right before we came on. Wes Awundu was not real pleased with that, but none of that seemed to bother many of the K-State players on their current roster. Hey, grab a glass of Ben Holiday bottled in bond bourbon. Trust me on that one. Or some 360 vodka before we venture into this. It's brought to you by our friends at Holiday Distillery. They're great K-State folks, so support them, obviously, if you're going to try some bourbon. We get rave reviews all the time, and if you don't have it near you, ask for it, and they will come to you, my friends. Cole and I did a Patreon episode right after the game, so you got some instant reaction if you are a patron. Patreon.com/3Ma to sign up for that. It's $5 a month. You get some extra audio. You get access to our Discord. So we've vented a bit, but I don't know. I guess Cole, I'll start with you. You feeling any different after having this set in for, what are we at now? Like 36 hours, 48 hours, something like
that? Probably even more checked out, more frustrated, not seeing light at the end of the tunnel on how this gets fixed. And so, very, very disappointing what has transpired. We talked about it on the Patreon show, but I don't think any of us after year one ever thought we'd be in this position. And, it's been a rough 3 years for Kansas State basketball and Jerome Tang. And now they're in a position where I just don't think it's ever going to get fixed under this coaching staff.
You mentioned the worst home loss to KU since 2002. I think the 0-5 start to Big 12 play was the first since 1997. And I kind of liken this back to, I think was the end of the Bruce Weber era. We kept going to historical new lows, and we kept pointing them out. Feels kind of similar.
It is. Yeah, it is. The era is so different. Like, it's weird. And some of that, Bruce's end was happening during COVID too. There was like a weird COVID season in there where they were terrible. So but a part of what is so jarring about this and different about this is how many, you got some high profile players on these teams that have come through here the last few years. And there's been so much made about the amount of money that's been spent, which, again, I will give credit to. Jerome Tang's been a really good fundraiser, and I appreciate him for that. But you got to do something with the money other than light it on fire, and that's basically what's happened here the last few years. So
yeah, how they've gotten to each of their points is different. I guess the thought of like the negatives and how negative it is just kind of feels like you're going back to the really bad era of college or Kansas State basketball with both of their tenures. And to be honest, the basketball wasn't even what I was like the most pissed about after that game. You lose 86-62. I was going to say, man, that's kind of what I expected, but I think I said on our prior show before the game, I was like KU 12 or 13, so the 24 is not what I expected. It was kind of dramatically worse. It got worse pretty bad because they did compete and they were in it for 80% of that game. But it's kind of what you alluded to that irritated me most, in that you got KU having a dunk contest on your home court in the final minute because they're still playing and you're not. And you got Melvin Council hitting the Wabash, and then the belt to the floor and the away locker room. And I'm not even mad at KU for any of that. You
No.
You kick your rival's ass that bad, you deserve to rub it in. Do what you want. But what it pisses me off is that it goes unanswered and uncared about by every single person on the Kansas State basketball roster. I've seen, you said Wes Wando, I didn't even know about that one. I just looked it up. I've seen other players. It's like, you did nothing. And that was my reaction too. You did nothing when all of that happened.
Coleman Hawkins got mad about it, of all people. Coleman Hawkins was mad. Like, Coleman Hawkins was like, what the hell? Like, you can't let him do that.
No, you can't. It's like, I don't know. I'm not even a lifelong K-State fan like you guys, so I can only imagine. But it was like, I was just like, red, just seeing red. It's like, you just let them. But I guess that is the problem when you're in the mercenary basketball era, which some teams have been able to avoid, at least to an extent, right? They don't bring back only one or two players each season. So that's kind of a Jerome Tang thing more than a everyone else thing. His are a little bit more severe, the lack of turnover. But it is funny still, because I go back to last season also, when things got really bad and negative again, and you have this new angle from Jerome Tang and the coaches every time. And last season it was like, we got to do the Kelvin Sampson model and do the continuity thing and have less mercenaries. Then we got to the off season and they didn't do that, either out of an incapability to do that or an inability to stick to a plan, which has been the theme of his tenure at Kansas State.
Yeah, the culture of this program sucks. There is no culture. And I didn't even really get upset when Melvin Council did that, because it's like, I don't like, but normal me, I would have been pissed, and I know the players would have reacted, but like, it's to the point of apathy for me. And what frustrated me again was just another point of illustration and proof that these guys really don't care that much, because there was no reaction. I mean, you talk about no plan, DY. And we did that show in the offseason where we said the portal strategy makes no sense. They added Marcus Johnson. They added Stephen Osei. I think Osei played one game, so he technically burned his red shirt, right? I don't even know. Was he on the bench on Saturday? Is he?
Yeah, he was there. He was there, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I saw him in the handshake line.
All right, so you got Marcus Johnson. You had Stephen Osei. You were going to add Ashton McGee. And Zay Wilson, you did add. You cut ties with Ashton McGee, who was a high school recruit. You keep Zay Wilson. And then you add CJ Jones, who showed to you that he's not a Power 6 or Power 5 college basketball guard last year. And you add him in the middle of summer because nobody else wanted him. Oh, sure, we'll take him back. And who's the guy that gets the ball stolen at the end of the game and just stands there and watches? CJ Jones is one of the worst guards in college basketball. He's one of the worst guards at the Power 5 level. He's got an offensive rating that is atrocious. He's shooting 30% from the floor, and he is finding 10 to 15 minutes a game on this team. It's just another part of the strategy that makes no sense on how they assembled this roster, and I feel like a fool for buying in and having any hope that this thing could work when they did this in the offseason.
I know some of it's injury driven, but they had the same four guys missing the Utah game, and Marcus Johnson didn't play. And then you had basically the same guys available for the KU game, and he's the first one off the bench.
Well, just the amount of money that's on this roster, like I hesitate in saying this because I don't want to crush Marcus Johnson. Do not take this to nobody go out there and like crush Marcus Johnson. He's being put in a position that is just unfair. He shouldn't be there. But like, if you have that much money to spend on this roster, Marcus Johnson should not be on this roster. We said it at the time. Yes, the portal strategy did not make sense. And I mean, it feels like that ruffled some feathers. I think we stand by our statement here on Monday, January 26th. Like, what? It's just been spray and pray with a bunch of money and try and get as many high profile guys as you possibly can and like make it work. And it's turned out to be the absolute worst case scenario with that, like total disaster.
I said in the last show, there's not a method to the madness. They're like, I want that guy. There's no reason. Like, you have to have a reason to want someone or a reason. And then the pieces have to fit, but it's like, they don't think with or recruit, I guess, with that in mind. It's like, or he's good, he's good, he's good, he's good. Sometimes you can put four good players together and they don't fit together, and
Well,
and they don't align with the way you want to play or philosophy. Like they wanted to, not that they're really doing it, but Cole had Driscoll on in the podcast in the off season and others, and Cole very much laid out what this offensive philosophy was going to be: pace and space. If you're going to do that, then why are you recruiting Marcus Johnson to begin with? That's I don't really get a pace vibe from Marcus Johnson.
Yeah. Well, the thing too, I guess that's a decent point, DY, that like Driscoll came on and did talk about some semblance of a like style or fit. But I was talking last night on my YouTube show about this, and I started to say, hey, because we'll get to this part of the discussion down the road, but I'm like, sure is looking like he'll be back next year, and it'll be with far less money than he had before. And I thought, well, maybe that will take away these like shiny toys that have been distracting, and then you can go get guys that fit what you're trying to do better. But then I was like, fit what? Like fit what? What is the culture? What is the style? I have no idea. I've been watching Jerome Tang basketball for 3.5 years now. I have no idea what the fit is that you're trying to recruit to. I have zero clue. There's been no established identity.
There was the obsession with the 5-out thing that they were going to do. They're like, they acted like they were creating the new basketball world with 5-out, and we're recruiting Patrick Gongba, who ended up going to Duke. And then 2 years of missing the NCAA tournament, they're like, oh, now we're going to bring in offensive guru Matthew Driscoll from North Florida. We're going to pace and space and bomb threes.
Which, by the way, have you seen how Patrick Gongba plays? The 5-out offense doesn't make sense for him. He is a traditional center, and he's doing well for Duke. So that would have been a nice addition. The only thing you could have hung your hat on, guys, the first 3 years was defensive identity. Last year they were bad on defense the first half of the season. They corrected it midway through, and they finished top 40 in Ken Palm defense. The year before that, they were top 30. They were top 25 in the Elite Eight season, I want to say, with a 95.0 defensive rating. This year, a 106.9 defensive rating on Ken Palm. And right before the show, I went through every season of K-State basketball during the Ken Palm era, which goes back to the 2001-2002 season, the year that Jim Woldridge had the worst defeat to Kansas in that stretch that we just talked about. It is the worst defensive rating by a K-State basketball team in the Ken Palm era, which is that 2001-2002 season. And it probably goes back farther, guys, because the 2001-2002 season defensive rating was 100.3. This team is 106.9. The 01-02 team is the only team that had a defensive rating that reached 100 or more, except for this one. And so their defense is a complete disaster. We talked about, had Isaac Trotter of CBS Sports on before the season on the show, and he said, the one thing that he thought they'd really be able to do well is get downhill, get out in transition, and get to the free throw line, because they added guys like PJ Haggerty and Nate Johnson who were good at getting to the free throw line. In 2024-2025, K-State was 326th in the country in free throw rate. In 2025-2026, as we sit here today on January 26th, Kansas State is 336th in the country in free throw rate. They didn't get better. They are 259th in the country in defensive rebounding percentage. They're 282nd in block percentage. Last year, they were 276th in defensive rebounding percentage and 255th in block rate. 23-24, 245th in defensive rebounding, 288th in block rate. And in 2022-23, 264th in defensive rebounding percentage and 311th in the country in block percentage. They were good at free throw rate the first two seasons of the Tang era, but the last two, no, they're awful. They don't get to the foul line. They don't finish in the paint. It's because they're soft. They're not very big. They don't recruit a good front court. David Gasson was obviously tough as hell, but outside of him, they've lacked a ton of toughness over the last couple of years.
Yeah, boy, some pretty damning stats. The other thing is like, yeah, Marquise Noel and Tyler Perry, were both, they were tough. They would go get to the rim. They get fouled. They get to the line. But once you lost them, just have not really recovered very much there. You know, I guess before we break and talk more about the future, is there anything else as far as what this current team is that you feel like needs to be covered? Like, I mean, obviously, it looks like the rest of the season. I did kind of laugh at DY like going through the schedule right before we popped on here. And it's like, man, there's a lot more games for this team left to lose. I mean, that's you start looking at the schedule. It's what it feels like. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I was gonna say like it'd be a shocker of all shockers if this isn't the Ting team with the worst record. I don't know that they were a team as talented as last year on paper. Probably not, but it just seemed like they had better guys, and maybe that's still true. They just don't care as much. I don't know, but now you're talking about 3 guys that you were starting being out for multiple games. It sounds like they'll still be out moving forward. I don't know if there's a quit factor here, but you have to think about it. You're 1-6. You just got your clocks cleaned, and now you have to go to Morgantown. The crowd's the rest of the way in Bramlage. I mean, again, you're 1-6. Have you lost 5 home games already this year? I believe so, which is a pretty big number for it only being January 26.
Do we still have the streak of consecutive winning home records? Is that still a thing? I know that was the thing that was like touted forever. Is that on the line here?
I think that ended right at the end of the Weber.
Okay.
But yeah, I remember.
I think they have. Yeah, I guess I was saying that. Excuse me. I think they have 5 home losses already, and you just lost. You just got whooped by 24 in the last one that really matters to fans, donors, students. Like I mean, they're going to have no home court advantage the rest of the way. You're already 1-6. You still have to go to Lubbock and Houston. I mean, it's going to be pretty ugly. If we're talking about future and trajectory. I think I said 5 wins at most, and Cole said he didn't think it'd get to that.
Yeah, I think they'll go 3-15 is in league play, which is where I'm at. Yeah, I don't. It's not going to get better. And you factor in the quit factor of this team as things continue to trend worse. What are they going to be fighting for? Again, they showed they have no fight in the last 7 to 8 minutes against Kansas. So, it's only a matter of time that this thing gets uglier. Fans stop coming to games. I don't blame them. As you think, like also at home court, you've lost by 16 to Bowling Green. You lost by 11 to Seton Hall, and you were down by 20 in that game on your home floor. You lose by 24 to KU. You lose by 10 to BYU. Like you're not very competitive in a lot of these games on your home floor.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said. Even like last year's team that we really hated watching, like that team would compete and have a chance to win, and did win some of these home games against Arizona, KU, BYU, and this team just doesn't have that even.
Yeah. One guy I'm confident does have fight and care on this team is David Castillo,
and he got called out. And
I was waiting to make that point.
I wanted to touch on that. I figured we would after the break, but that pissed me off too.
Okay, yeah. Well, we're here. That David Castillo is like one guy. If there's one guy that I'm probably not going to call out on this team, and a guy that let's be real. They bring CJ Jones back because they don't think that David Castillo was taking a jump. They didn't trust him. And look, he was awful last year for sure. Full stop. But he got way better. He's a much better player, and he does care. And he stuck around in your program after last year. The one guy, and he's getting called out after that. I saw far greater problems than David Castillo in the Kansas game. To single him out at the mic after the can we have some feel here for what's going on, or just like put it all on yourself, man? Like that's unbelievable that David Castillo has to take some of the brunt of that. Dave, I'm okay with you, man. I got no issues. Thank you for trying.
Now, he didn't play well against Kansas, but he's been one of the 2 or 3 best players and most consistent players. He hasn't been as good in Big 12 as he was in non-con, but that's not the problem here.
Yeah. I mean, Nate Johnson got called out too, and he has been really poor since the first 7-8 games of the year. I don't know if it's leveling up to the competition, but things have taken a big turn south on Nate Johnson. But David Castillo deserved none of that. That's a foolish thing to go out and say about one of the guys. When you talk about retention model, you're talking about retention model, and you go out and call out the one guy that came back that actually is showing some hope into the future. And we can get into even more of the retention model and no plan. I know we got to throw it to a break, and we've got plenty more to discuss about the future. So,
yeah, okay. Well, we'll take a break and go there next.
What is happening, good people? It is Benny Heiss, KCSN betting analyst. And guess what? We got the Super Bowl coming around just in the nick of time. Cannot wait. And listen, it's the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 60 deserves a sportsbook that is built for the moment, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 60, puts you right in the center of the biggest game of the year. Listen, we've seen some wild Super Bowls, right? And we've also seen that anything can happen during the Super Bowl. And the good news is that DraftKings will have your back with early exit. If a player goes down in the first half, you still get paid in cash immediately once your bet settles. No bonus bets, no waiting. It's that easy. Taking a look at the early line here, right now we're seeing the Seahawks at -4.5 at -115 odds over at DraftKings Sportsbook, which means the Patriots +4.5 as underdogs at +190 on the money line with a total of 46.5. Whether you're looking at the actual game itself, the different possibilities for Super Bowl MVP, or you're just looking to get in on some of these wild and wacky props that are available only during the Super Bowl, you can get those over at DraftKings. And remember, if you're new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. All you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use the code KCSN. That's code KCSN to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, remember to call 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility and restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets, which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
We just come back and we come back and DY's just like shaking his head. I just.
Well, because I just remembered the David Castillo thing again, and I just can't imagine being him right now.
I know, it's just like such a state of the program when we take a break and DY can't help but just sit there and think to himself and be like, oh man,
it should have been of our Linko top story, and we missed that. That would have been a good one.
You think that's well? Look, there's a big elephant in the room here. It's the top storyline.
That's true.
I mean, that's the top storyline. So, like, I know it's going to go on social and all that, but that was my plan.
Yeah. Who cares?
Save it for that.
Oh, well, I have to live here, so I'll let you two handle this.
What? Come on, DY.
Well, look, and I don't think.
Actually,
do we have ground? Do we have ground to cover before we go there?
The only other like game-related thing I had was that in the first year, I remember coming out of timeouts or baseline out of bounds plays, Kansas State was like amazing under Jerome Tang. I'm like, we finally got like this schemer, ultimate strategist. And now we've come to year 4 and they're coming out of plays with the ball in CJ Jones' hands with 5 seconds like on the clock for some reason, and it's out of a timeout, or you're in a last second shot situation at Oklahoma State and you have 3 seconds on the clock and you just, all you do is a PJ Haggerty heave at half court. So those were the only, I guess, on-court related stuff that I still had, that they appeared to go from really, really good in that area in year 1 to year 4, having no clue. I don't know.
Well, there is something too, like, I'm with you on that. Like, I even remember the NIT season, like a part of the reason that coming out of that, we were still gung-ho on this coaching staff and not wanting Tang to leave for Arkansas and that whole thing, which looks really interesting in retrospect, is because it seemed like they did a pretty good job coaching that year. Like they pulled a lot out of, once you lost Naquan Tomlin, it felt like they did actually pull a lot out of that roster. They were really tough defensively. They got a ton out of Tyler Perry and using him in a different way as the point guard. Like we have seen, it's not, we can be very critical here because of what this looks like, deservedly so. I don't think that it's just like all the coaching ability just vanished. I just think it's been a myriad of bad decisions over and over again. And to me, this is a point Cole and I talked a little bit about on the Patreon show, DY. So I guess I'll get your thoughts here. I'll offer this in like, just as like hey, I think this is something that hurt both Jerome Tang and frankly Baylor. If you look at Baylor right now in the direction of that program, Baylor won a national championship by following largely the Houston model. I mean, they sprinkled in some transfers, but it's program guys and development, and that's what Jerome Tang knew. Then he gets to K-State. The first year, they blow up and explode and go to the Elite Eight right as the sport is transitioning into like money rules everything. And so I think there was probably a bit of like sensing the moment combined with the ego of like, look what we already did. If we go just buy the best players when we just did that, with this roster we had to scrape together, like that, look what will happen. And so he just dove headfirst in on that and went really hard toward that and abandoned what had been successful at Baylor. And this is the result of it. It didn't work. And now you're kind of too far gone to go back to that. One, because of the era we're in, and two, because, well, yeah, you do things like call Dave Castillo out. Who are you going to bring back from? Like, you've just gotten in this cycle that you can't get out of. And so I think some of this just spiraled in that regard. And so you probably just have like a culture and a locker room and a team right now that is making some of that stuff more difficult too. And I really do just wonder about either if you don't go to the Elite Eight in the first year or if we are still in the old era. I mean, I would guarantee if we were still in the old era, Jerome Tang would be a much more successful coach right now at K-State. I think he was, cut out to be a pretty dynamic recruiter in that era, and I think that's what worked at Baylor and what he learned. And now you're seeing both K-State and Baylor tanking now that it's gone into a different style here.
It's possible, though. Like I said, he would have been a good recruiter in that area. It feels like he could still be a good recruiter, right? Because it is a money rules everything, but that hasn't really been an issue for them. They haven't been deficient in that area. So I feel like I've overrated the recruiting a little bit. They get like a stud or two each time, but like in terms of building a complete roster, it seems incapable of that. Remember one time in the offseason, it seemed very likely that this was going to be the team minus PJ Haggerty. We talked about that on, I think, the last show. That one kind of fell into their lap a little bit because NC State had to go in a different direction. Had NC State had to go in a different direction, PJ Haggerty wouldn't be at Kansas State. Like, that wasn't really in the plans. It was just something that kind of came to them. But in totality, I think you're probably right. But those are things that just come to mind to me. And that's still, like, I don't know. I'm not a basketball coach. They just brought in an offensive guru in an off season. I would think you could come up with something better out of a timeout than the ball being stuck in CJ Jones' hands.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've had to scrap some things. Like, you think about when Jerome Tang took the job, and it was at the onset of the NIL era as it was getting ready to blow up the next year. And in his opening press conference, he was asked about NIL, and he called it pennies, to the NBA. And then it felt like within a year, Jerome Tang became obsessed with raising a ton of money and throwing out huge numbers to guys, which you had to adjust at some level, because the way NIL was going, like, it wasn't going to work if you were only throwing out $4 million for a roster for most programs. But he took it to the extreme, and it feels like there was a real lack of evaluation of guys and how the roster would fit together and mesh, which is to where Jerome Tang should have hired a general manager years ago, and he's never done it. He had the opportunity again to do it this last offseason, and he didn't. And so they were unprepared when they entered the transfer portal, and they just kind of threw things together, throughout the process, and there really was no process. You think about the high school retention stuff when he said that. Okay, well, if you preach the high school retention stuff and you were willing to take high school prospects, because at one point you took a commitment from a lowly recruited Ashton McGee who had no power offers, and as well as Zay Wilson, who was committed to Missouri State. DY. I think he was committed to Missouri State or somewhere over there when Kansas State took Zay Wilson. So you were willing to take a couple high school kids. But then what do we see on Saturday, and what have you seen if you pay attention to college basketball throughout the season? A kid in your own backyard out of Kansas City and Keaton Wagler, who went to Illinois because Brad Underwood's a hell of a coach and can scout guys, went and took him, and he scored 46 points at Purdue as a true freshman on the road out of Kansas City that Jerome Tang never even recruited. And so, and I get he wasn't like some star recruit, like he wasn't listed as a 4 or 5 star recruit in the country, but Brad Underwood came in and got him, Illinois. And if you were willing to take Zay Wilson and Ashton McGee at one point, why the hell were you not recruiting a guy 80 miles away from your home that could have been a great player for you? And so that's just another example of, misevaluations, no plan. There's a ton of great freshmen in college basketball this year. Jerome Tang and the staff only chased the 5-star types that, it's very disappointing. And you mentioned the end of the Bruce Weber era at the onset of the show. The one thing I think about, Bruce Weber was 34-58 his last 3 years, and there were some really different circumstances with the pandemic. Jerome Tang is now 44-42 over the last 2.5 seasons. But I think if you gave Bruce Weber the resources that Jerome Tang's gotten in terms of finances, he would have landed some quality players and he would have coached them up better than what we've seen. So probably would have been better.
You definitely would have coached them up. Everything else is probably in the air. I don't know. Bruce has a little bit of like, I don't think this is how college athletics should operate. So I don't know how much he would have leaned into it. And yeah, with the resources, he probably could have got players, but I don't think he would have fundraised. So it would have been all different and all relative, but he would be getting more out of these guys than what Jerome Tang is. And that's probably not even a debate. And I'll say this about Bruce Weber teams too. And it's also different eras. He didn't have a ton of mercenaries. So this is different too. Like that Wabash stuff and belt thing, that wouldn't be going unanswered on Bruce teams. I mean, they had a brawl in Allen Fieldhouse.
Yeah, I just think apples to oranges. It's really apples to oranges. Like I don't know that there's plenty to be critical about with Jerome Tang and what's going on right now. Without, I don't think that it's real productive to do a direct comp there. But is Bruce Weber probably having a chuckle somewhere after the way things ended here? Yeah, and he probably deserves to. So fair enough. Maybe the chuckle's happening on Big Ten Network. we can all watch it
as he's covering Illinois games. Yeah, it's all full circle.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, this is Top Storyline. It's brought to you by our friends in Alenco, ALENCO home.com, to get hooked up with Alenco for all your home improvement needs. If you have a project that needs done. I mean, so all this leads to you're between a rock and a hard place, because if you're wanting to go the direction of make a change, get a new coach, well, you've got an $18 million plus buyout. If Jerome Tang is going to stick around, a guy who's been getting top 15-ish NIL money the last couple of years, I mean, that spigot, I think, is going to be shut off. So you're looking at, man, this is what the team has looked like with a ton of money the last 2 years. What's it going to look like without money if he's back next year? If you're trying to go back to the Houston model, which was referenced last year, do you feel confident that a lot of guys from this roster are going to stick around? Like you're probably just going to be doing the same thing. You're caught in this rough cycle. So that's the conundrum you're in. I mean, it really, truly is being between a rock and a hard place. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how you're getting out of this right now. Not entirely sure.
Yeah, what I would say is it deserved to have this discussion and to contemplate going that path? I would say absolutely. You're staring down the barrel of a third straight missed NCAA tournament, which is exactly what happened with Bruce Weber that ultimately got him fired. So I understand the conversation, but if there's a buyout there that can't be negotiated down, like if they truly want to do it, it requires $18.7 million. I just don't think that's financially responsible in this climate where K-State is already really, really tightly strapped when it comes to the financial limitations and the budgets and everything like that, because you have to pay the players. You're still operating everything the way you did before. You just hired a new football coach, a new coaching staff that also wants resources to win at the highest level. So if it requires $18.7 million to do it, I just think that's financially irresponsible at the moment.
We talked about this on patreon.com on the show on Saturday night, and we talked about it in a group text, and this is what you do this offseason. You actually could start the conversation now. You approach Jerome Tang and his agent, and you tell him, we need to restructure your contract. Okay? You're going to restructure that buyout down like Oklahoma State did, Mike Norvell at Florida State. Those guys in football did some different things, gave money back for NIL, etc. Your buyout is going to drop from $18.7 million to $5-6 million after this offseason. And we're going to give you the resources and allocate to you what you need still from an NIL perspective to be competitive and to prove to us that you can win. And if you don't make the NCAA tournament for a fourth consecutive season, you're going to be fired, and any power coach would be fired. If you believe in yourself and you're confident in your abilities, as you say you are, you will take the restructured contract because you believe if we allocate those resources to you once again, you're going to figure out a way to win. And if you don't, you're out of a job. You go take a $5 to $6 million buyout instead of what it would have been a year later at $15.7 million or whatever it is. And we part ways because it's not an amicable situation that's going to work out. You don't want to be here, after 4 seasons and not making the NCAA tournament. You're going to be miserable. Fans aren't going to be going to games, etc. And if you don't agree to that, you don't restructure your buyout. That says a lot, honestly, in my mind. And it also, shows to me that you're maybe more about money than I think a lot of us had hoped. And it also just means that you're not going to get NIL resources, because that's the proposition that I put on the table. I say, we're going to give you NIL, or if you don't restructure, you're going to get the bare minimum, and it's going to be a disaster. Now, both parties get hurt in that situation. So that's not the ideal. That's not what you really wanted to come to, but I think that's what you have to do. You have to go tell them that you're going to get the bare minimum resources. In this era of NIL and football being, so important and critical to college athletic success, you need to be allocating resources to football. And if Jerome Tang can't be entrusted with the money, which he's proven he can't be the last couple of years, to build a competitive roster that gets to the NCAA tournament, you can't afford to give him the resources once again and burn that money.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think those scenarios have to be on the table. You got to talk about stuff like that. That's the reality of the situation. But another reality of the situation is that Jerome Tang does kind of have you over the barrel, man. I mean, like, you do have to look in the mirror and say, hey, we signed this contract like this. We did this. And look, I'm first to admit, like, hey, we were scared that Jerome Tang was leaving for Arkansas. We wanted him to stick around at that point. We celebrated when they signed him and got the deal done and made it. Now, looking back, they hired John Calipari. Was this more just kind of like a cursory interview that got blown up and turned into something more? I don't know. I think it's fair to wonder but if it is, Jerome Tang leveraged what he had very well, and you've got to be responsible for the fact that you signed the damn contract. Like, so I do want to at least put that out there. Like, I know it's easy to say, hey, it says a lot about you if you're not going to negotiate your buyout down from $18.7 million to $5 million. I mean, how many people out there listening would just willingly give up $13 million when you leveraged yourself into that? I'm all for criticizing Jerome Tang a lot, but how many people are just going to willingly go like, yeah, $13 million, I'll, kick that down the road?
I get that. But if he says the values that he preaches and is about the betterment of Kansas State, it's not like you're saying, hey, we just want to take your buyout down to $5 million and fire you immediately right now. No, we're going to give you the resources to go win in year 5 and everything you need. And we trust that you're going to do it, right? And if he doesn't believe he can do it again, a 4th consecutive season, that speaks volumes about what he believes in himself and his coaching staff, that they're incapable of getting the job done. So if he won't agree to taking a restructured buyout, when you tell him, hey, we'll give you $10 million in NIL again to go win, you can't do it a fourth straight season, that says a lot to me. Now, I agree. Gene Taylor made a mistake, obviously, in giving him the buyout that he did. But that's my perspective. Like, the things that Jerome Tang preaches, like, I want to see it come through in action.
What I would say is we can't bicker about the contract too much, because I'm pretty sure if we went back and watched this show with us three on, we were probably telling Gene Taylor to do whatever it takes to keep Jerome Tang in that moment. And ultimately, that's what Gene Taylor did. I would have thought it would have not taken this massive of a buyout to do, but maybe it did. I don't know. It is still an irresponsible buyout. I mean, how much is the basketball program's budget? I mean, it can't be much higher than $19 million, right? If all things considered that it costs to run a basketball program on a yearly basis at Kansas State. So his buyout is almost the entire basketball program's budget? I mean, that is a little bit financially irresponsible. But at the same time, everybody wanted Gene Taylor to do whatever it takes. It looks like he did. But sometimes when you can't fire the coach when you need the coach, then you do have to look at the guy that signed him to that contract.
I've got some thoughts on that. Let's take a break and come back and get more into that.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Yeah, I will go. For me personally, I was telling Cole this on the Patreon show. I was like, I remember after that happened, when we did like a celebratory show when Tang announced he was coming back. I mean, just to take my personal responsibility, I remember sending Gene Taylor a text and being like, hey, hell yeah, let's go, you know? Again, we're not the perfect messengers here, but the reality is we're also not being paid like $900,000 a year to make these decisions, you know? I mean, and you do, I just want to emphasize, like, you got to take responsibility. I think sometimes it's really easy. We see it a lot. Coaches with massive buyouts, you know, like the Penn State and, you know, people like, oh, that crazy buyout conversation. And a lot of times it feels like no one wants to take responsibility for the schools signing these deals. Like, and it is kind of an industry wide thing right now, but you do also have to say, like, hey, you guys have gotten so crazy with all this that you continue to sign these deals with like wild buyouts, and it can lead to getting into situations like this. So there is a level of personal responsibility that needs to happen there.
I'll ask the opening question here on that decision by Gene Taylor. Is his job to do what his constituents and stakeholders tell him to do? Because I'm sure the donors were telling him to do whatever it takes, and then he did. Or is his job to act in the best interest of Kansas State and tell those donors that he relies on to buzz off, I'm going to do, and then maybe strain those relationships? Because the more I think about this too, as we're having this discussion, is did Gene really do what he should? Did Gene still do what he should have done? Like, if it's those donors that he relies on for financial support on a yearly basis telling him to do this, he couldn't really say no, right? Because then he needs that money the next year and the year after that and the year after that just to operate a budget at Kansas State.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I think the job is to balance those two things the best that you can, you know, because ultimately the job is to do what's in the best interest of K-State athletics. So the job is balancing all of those things. And that comes back to one thing that I have said over and over again. Like, I will give Jerome Tang credit for this. I've been sitting here complaining about, like, K-State athletics, meet the moment, understand what this is. You got to have money. You got to fundraise. You got to have a vision. Jerome Tang got that. And he not only raised the money, but he had a lot of donors that really liked him. So if that's the point that you're bringing up, DY, like, Jerome Tang had curried a lot of favor there. So there were people that were going to stick up for that and stick up for him. And that is one thing he has done well. Now, you could say that's been to the detriment of K-State athletics at this point, and it sure looks like it right now, but you got to give him credit for that. He did do that.
Yeah. Of course, if you had the resources that were given him, the conversations that occurred, it was promises that he would deliver a national championship to Kansas State if you gave him the resources at the Kansas tournament.
He brought a national championship over and over again.
Yeah. So you talk a big game like that, give us the money, we'll go win. Not just win, talked about getting a parade in Manhattan repeatedly, and you can't even get on the bubble for the NCAA tournament with those resources. So, that says a lot. But yeah, I mean, it's Gene Taylor's job to act in the best interests of Kansas State University, though you could argue that also it requires a lot of nuance, because in the best interest of Kansas State University means keeping donors that are giving a lot of money appeased and happy as well. It was a really tough spot for him. We were all really excited, like John said, when he did stay and announced they got it done, that he wasn't going to go to Arkansas, though I think it's also fair to question, like John said, if Arkansas truly was offering Jerome Tang the job, or if it was just a well-done job by Jerome Tang's agent to make everyone think that it was very, very serious and that it was going to happen. Because at the end of the day, they end up with Calipari, Tyson Foods. They get involved, and the donors that they have, they get a guy like Cal. So I don't know, man. I don't think any of us are advocating to spend $18.7 million to fire a basketball coach. That's not feasible. In this climate, you can't go spend almost $19 million to fire a basketball coach and then go hire a coach and then fund a roster through NIL. And so,
while you're trying to make an impression on Colin Klein and the resources that you're giving him.
Yeah, it's not a great message to send. Like, if Colin Klein needs a couple $1 million extra to go get a player next year, and they're like, well, sorry, we just spent $19 million to fire this basketball coach over here, so it's going to be hard. Money's a little tight. That's not a good message to send to your new head football coach and his staff. So that's a tough spot. It would only happen if there was some sort of middle ground or compromise that you could get Jerome Tang to agree to. So,
yeah, I mean, it's just a critical point for your football program. Like, you can't do anything with me. I know it sucks, everybody. It sucks right now watching this and looking at what the future seems to be for this, especially when the Big 12 is just such an awesome basketball conference. There's so much, and it's really fun to just watch games in the league right now, and you're not a part of it. Like, that sucks. But, like, for the future of K-State athletics, again, looking out for the best interest of K-State athletics overall, critical point for the football program. You gotta give Colin Klein everything that he wants. So yes, I would not advocate paying, unless there's, unless a certain billionaire former part owner of the Celtics would like to just drop in $300 million like David Booth did, and then you've got that money, or unless you sign a $500 million private equity deal like Utah did, I would not advocate for paying that money right now.
Yeah.
I don't think you can.
And it sucks, like, to suck in basketball, especially, not only because the Big 12 is such a fun league, but there's 30 plus games in basketball. So you watch it so much more. In football, you get 12 weekends a year, 12 opportunities. And in basketball, you got 32, 34 games. You're playing multiple times a week. And so when you're awful at it, it's just such a miserable time. And it's winter time. You're stuck inside. And, oh, hey, I'm going to watch the game tonight. Oh, wait, I don't want to watch it because they're terrible. And then you've got an 8-month law to get to football season. So, John and I grew up with terrible K-State basketball, like a lot of our listeners. And it sucks that now this is going to be what, John and DY's 6 out of 7 seasons with no NCAA tournament. And I guess a fair criticism of that, guys, is like under Gene Taylor's watch, the men's basketball program now will have failed to make the tournament in 6 out of 7 seasons. And that's tough to stomach.
Yeah, I mean, well, you get to watch them in the players era next year, so get excited.
Well, yeah, maybe that'll be how they fund the NIL, you know?
Well, yeah, they have to win it, I think, though, to get the money.
Might get a little bit of a guarantee.
Everyone gets some, yeah.
Okay, so they'll fund their roster with $50,000. Like, what do we?
Well, I think it's more than that, but maybe I don't know.
I don't think I saw the winner gets like $1 million, and then it's like $500K, and then $250K for like the first 3 places. I don't know that it's going to be much more than that, but anyway.
Okay. Well, pardon me then.
We'll have to look into it more because it expanded to 32 teams next year, which is a huge expansion effort. So I don't know how much more money they're going to have.
Two different like things.
In fact, I guess I'll just say this with Gene and the men's basketball program. He was hired in spring of 2017. So at that point, it was like, a lot of people wanted an immediate trigger on like firing Bruce Weber.
Yeah.
Didn't happen. Then Bruce goes to the Elite Eight, wins a Big 12 championship. And then you have this 6 of 7. But like under Gene Taylor's watch, they have been to 2 Elite Eights, won a Big 12 championship, and then missed the tournament 6 times. So
yeah, no, it's a fair call out. Like he couldn't have fired Bruce Weber coming at the heels of the 2 seasons, his first 2 seasons as the AD here. He absolutely couldn't do that. And then you have to give him time. And then you have the pandemic season sandwiched in between. So yeah, like I'm not blaming him. Like he fired Bruce Weber when he should have fired Bruce Weber. He did the right thing there. So really it's just a poor stretch that is tough to stomach as a K-State fan and missing the tournament this much. And I think we always said like you can't miss the tournament 3 straight years. That's where they're at, but they also can't afford to, move on from a basketball coach with the level of buyout he has unless they agree to something in the middle.
I think it's his only. He's got some small failures, but from a coaching perspective, this is his only real failure so far as an athletic director.
Yeah. Fortunately, just a big one. And some of that is circumstance and, where buyouts have gone. And some of it is just, yeah, I mean, it feels like Jerome Tang worked him pretty good.
Yeah. Although, if we were going to call him out, or didn't he say after Kleiman at his retirement press conference, he kind of threw a pep rally for himself for hiring Jerome Tang, like literally like 3 weeks ago or a month ago?
I think I've heard people bring that up. Like, I get it. It sounded ridiculous to say at the time. And like, hey, we hired this. If you want to say, just don't say anything about Jerome Tang, I guess, then fine. What's he going to publicly say about Jerome Tang?
Well, he wasn't
at the Chris Kleiman press conference, he's supposed to be like, oh, by the way, I really screwed up and hired this basketball coach, so we need to fire, but, we don't have $19 million laying around.
Absolutely, but he wasn't asked about Jerome Tang.
Yeah, he shouldn't have just brought it up. Like it was off subject, and
it was literally unprovoked.
It was right after the Bowling Green loss. So that
he was trying to pat himself on the back for hiring a first-time head coach and it working out.
Yeah. So, anyways, it was a mistake, but there's bigger mistakes out there. So, yeah, go Cats, man! Exciting time.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the deal. I mean, hey, I'll say the same thing that I said on the Patreon show, by the way, patreon.com/3mod. I went over an hour. If you want more of this, you can sign up at patreon.com/3mod. Just in life, things typically never as good as they seem and never as bad as they seem, right? The answer is usually somewhere in between. So that's I'm getting shrugged off by DY, just like when we went to
between, John. Like what do you have for us? What could be that in between? What do you got?
Yeah, well, like, why is this not as bad? Like, what's worse than?
I need you to give me some hope. So,
okay,
tell me.
Well, maybe someone decides to. Maybe Jerome Tang decides, like, I don't think we feel like this will happen, but maybe he does decide to take the deal, if you will, Cole, the deal from you. take that buyout down, get NIL support for next year. And then you've got a chance to, maybe have a decent roster with the money. Perhaps we'll see. I think there's a whole boatload of problems with that and the reputation that Tang now has across basketball. And if you're a high level player, would you want to come? The whole conversation there, but
Yeah.
Maybe that works out, and then you're either out of it for far less money next year, or things do get better. I don't know. Maybe PJ Haggerty turns into a 6'10" beast down low and can play the 5 and the 1 at the same time, and
Are we getting DY rocking back in the chair again? That turned into that at one point.
Yes. Maybe they decide to start playing Stephen Osei and he turns into Kevin Durant.
Okay.
Maybe.
Wow. So that's where we're at. Completely. Did DY fall out of the chair?
I gave you one like realistic scenario. Okay, here's the second. Maybe next year, armed with only like $2.5 million of NIL money, he's forced to go recruit the next Keaton Wagler and bring that guy in, and he turns into a total stud. Look, that's got DY interested, and you start building. You pull in like 3 or 4 guys like that, and now you got something because you took away the bright, shiny object and toy and whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother discussion, but I don't know if he can really feel like he can afford to get into the high school recruiting ranks at this point very heavily. If he was going to be
point, has he ever?
Well, that's pretty much abandoned it.
Cole, if you only have $2.5 million of NIL, maybe you don't have a choice. This is the point.
Oh,
Well,
did you say Tad Boyle has like 9 freshmen on his team?
that's right.
Go that route.
You have to be recruiting them now though, because then we already have signing day. Yeah, we already had the signing day.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, they've already signed. I'm going to start combing through the best junior college players out there. Maybe there's
Spin Zone Cole. They found Naquan Tomlin from the junior college ranks that first year. All right.
Yep. I'm going to be looking through to see if I can find the next Larry Reed, Naquan Tomlin.
Find me all the 6'9", 6'10" athletic freaks that didn't play high school basketball, didn't play organized basketball until a very late stage of their high school career, and now they're in JUCO. Find me all of those guys right now.
Naquan Tomlin playing for the Cavs every night too.
Yeah, but I do think it's a good point to bring up that it's going to be harder for him to recruit not only from a dollar perspective next season, but the reputation of the staff. You're going to have to typically overpay for guys even more to get guys to come here at this point, given the failures of what's transpired. And you made coaching staff changes this offseason, and it's going to be your worst season in your 4 years here. So what's your next move? You're going to make more changes? What would give anybody any confidence that those changes would result in anything different?
Hey, maybe it does. Maybe it does. There you go. Let's throw that in there. Maybe there are coaching changes that will make things better or different. I don't know.
Yeah. Who are you going to convince it's a good coach to come in with the failures and thinking I might only be here 1 year? So who you're going to go get a general manager that's the next GM and tell him, hey, you've got $3 million to go build a roster in the toughest league in America.
A young up and comer. Okay. A young up and comer. You'll find Keaton Wagler and you'll find a young up and coming assistant coach that, is going to be a star at some point and can be good for you for a year or two.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe they'll rely on Trey Scott for some advice on how you get things set up in the transfer portal.
And again, I'm telling you, when the GM or the new guy sees that Stephen Osei is Kevin Durant, it's going to help a lot. That's hey, Spin Zone. They didn't evaluate David Castillo very well. So maybe they haven't evaluated Stephen Osei very well. And they've just been saving this as a way to throw us a middle finger for saying that their portal strategy didn't make sense when they brought in Osei.
Yeah, it's interesting, John. I saw Osei play an exhibition game and in one game this year. And, I've got to tell you, I don't think he's going to be the next Kevin Durant. So,
oh, yeah. Well, I was gonna say, Cole, is that back when you were watching the games? Because it was funny. You were like, I know people are gonna like stop watching the games or whatever, and I was like, oh, well, I mean, Cole stopped watching the games in December, so
Well, I stopped watching and then I tuned back in for Big 12 play. Boy, what a mistake that was. So we'll always have the win over Utah, though. Can't take that one away.
we'll always have the I would say 98% of the 2 games played at Sprint Center, Cole. That's what I would say. We'll always have that. That was as much fun as I've had with K-State basketball since we walked out of Madison Square Garden. and then it,
As John screaming Ken Palm repeatedly as we're blowing the doors off Mississippi State, and we thought the efficiency numbers actually mattered because we actually thought, hey, we might have postseason basketball.
It's like you coming up to me in the media row at one of the home games this year at halftime saying, I told you these guys can do it.
Well, that was for people to know transparency. That was at halftime of the Cal game when they were up by like 25. And I also had a couple of beverages because I happened to be sitting courtside that game. So
humble brag there. Then they almost lost. I was going to come back down at the end. I'm like,
In fairness, if you would have told me leaving Sprint Center that Nebraska was going to be 20-0, then I would have been like, oh, well, this team is really good. Like we're, came that close to beating 20-0 Nebraska.
As we were driving to the game against Nebraska, John goes, we're not really going to lose to dog shit Nebraska. I mean,
I don't know that I said it exactly like that, but I was like,
you framed up Nebraska like they sucked.
Man, we're just throwing all the receipts in each other's faces to end this one.
I mean, I didn't think they were going to be very good. Like, I thought they were probably mediocre at best. So
Kansas State's like the team that is the only team that came the closest to beating Nebraska.
Yeah, they blow everybody out now. So crazy world out there, and yet they'll still not win an NCAA tournament game. Even when
or they're the Indiana football version or better.
They're not. They'd get once they hit some of the other teams, and
we'll find out. We're recording this on Monday. We'll find out tomorrow night, Tuesday night. They play at Michigan. So,
okay, it's a good one. Yeah, all right. Let's wrap this. Thanks to Holiday. Thanks to Alenko. Thanks to Nick Springer. Thank you to you all for listening to this. We appreciate you all. Stick around here on 3Ma. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/3Ma. For DUI, for Cole, I'm John. Thanks for listening to another edition of 3Ma. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.